What's up, parish orphans and retrogrades? Timothy Gordon here on behalf of Rules for Retrogrades. It's Monday. It was a little bit of a tough weekend for the Sensus Fidelium, us laity, us faithful Catholics, parish orphans and retrogrades. We are feeling more so than ever, aren't we? Whew. That way, I mean, it's just sign of the times. We're called, my friends, to be a sign of the times in contradiction, a sign of contradiction. And I'm going to be talking today and a little bit over the next couple days about, as Catholics, we are allowed to be a sign of contradiction in certain ways. We're not allowed to be a sign of contradiction in all ways. And one thing I just wanted to do is check in with you guys and see, how are you doing? It's been a tough half week, tough last 3 days, because Pope Francis, with his motu proprio, went for the jugular on the young, enthusiastic, faithful Latin Mass, diocesan Latin Mass, FSSP, Latin Mass, ICKSP, out of bitterness, out of hatred, out of lack of faithfulness. And the good news is this: former prefect of the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith, Mueller, Cardinal Mueller, who's not like a right-wing extremist by any stretch of the term. Sometimes he's praised in a full-throated way Francis's pontificate. However, he rebuked Pope Francis for restricting the Latin Mass, and I'm going to read some key aspects of the article on The Catholic Thing, run by Robert Royal, who's a great dude, that I think will help you. But first, I just want to check in. How are you doing? I mean, you can't answer me here, but you can answer on chat. It's been a rough time. Stay faithful. Look, throughout salvation history, I told you this some 2 days ago, there have been worse things. There have been worse depletions for the faithful than this. I mean, before Christianity, the Jews in the late Old Testament, at a certain point, had the Ark of the Covenant removed, taken away from them. This is almost the equivalent of us having the Eucharist taken away from us, not one form of liturgy amongst another, but the Eucharist taken away. And guess what? God still expected the Israelites to be faithful, even without the great blessing, the great boon of having the presence of God via the Ark of the Covenant. That's worse. Okay. And look, this is really bad. There's no way to cope with this and say this isn't bad. There's no way to cope with this from a Francis's pontificate perspective in such a manner that mitigates the idea that this is a bitter, old, hateful man who's sitting in the chair of Peter, right? I've never tried to say that. I've never tried to pose otherwise, but it's all the more evident that this is a bitter old man. And you need to pray for his conversion of heart, for his hardness of heart, like Pharaoh. But it's not as bad as the Israelites having the Ark of the Covenant removed from them. And that was not the end. God still expected them to carry on. We still have the Eucharist. And many of us still even have the Tridentine Latin Mass. I went yesterday in New Orleans to St. Patrick's. Many of you went yesterday. The ranks were swelled. People were out there with their families in an even more populous way. People were out there, and it was even more packed than it normally is with their beautiful families. Keep the faith. Stay strong. I always admit to you guys that one of my shortcomings is I can get a little lazy. I can get a little corner cuttering. And that's why I go to the Latin Mass, once every 5 weeks or so, something, if I had to average it out, because it's far away. I'm going to make a legit effort, at least for the rest of the summer, to go much more often than that. Even though it's a drive, I admonish you to do the same. Not that you have to, because guess what? even if you're just going to the Novus Ordo, which is objectively less good, we still have the Eucharist. That's the faith, is the Eucharist. Lex orandi, lex credendi. Yes, the liturgy can be quite ugly. It gets quite ugly quite often with the Novus Ordo, but we still get the Eucharist. Don't forget that. Having the Eucharist removed would be the equivalent of having the Ark of the Covenant removed. So that's one time in salvation history where they had it worse. It's the Israelites, but it's pre-Christian. And they were expected to forbear, to carry on. Another time is in the period of the martyrs, right? The first 200 years, 225 years in specific of the church, where they had yes, they had whatever different liturgical rites were happening underground in the catacombs around the Mediterranean, but it wasn't formalized. They had no way of really promulgating the fact that they were having these masses. It was all word of mouth. They had the Eucharist, but then again, so do we. But they had no reasonable means of evangelizing. So whereas the Israelites 700 years before, 800 years before, had no Ark of the Covenant, in this second time in salvation history where Christians or salvation history denizens had it worse than us, in this second time, they had no means of bringing the gospel aside from the liturgy. And the liturgy had not been really formalized around the Mediterranean yet. And if they ducked their head out of the catacombs in order to bring the evangelization, it got chopped off. That's harder than what we have now, okay? And they were expected in those first 200, 250 years to stay the course, suffer a bit. This is where Eastern spirituality, Eastern Catholic spirituality, Eastern Orthodox, we'll say Eastern Orthodox spirituality, is robust and muscular. They deal well with mystery and suffering. People, let me just put this out there. I'm a Latin Mass guy. I love it. Having to go to the Novus Ordo is a bit of suffering. But no one out there, I think besides myself, is giving the straight up, open-ended speculation where they say, I don't know. I don't know exactly what this means in terms of salvation history, like the Ark of the Covenant or the period of the martyrs. But it, at the very least, means, you know, maybe this is partly punishment. Maybe it's punishment for, I don't know, the insufficient Russian consecration. I don't know. I'm speculating, so I'm not committed to that. But why is there no one else out there that's just saying, yeah, the Latin Mass is taken away. The Novus Ordo isn't good. It's not good, but it's valid. It's a crummier liturgy by pretty much all objective standards. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that we have like SJW action to take. Like, therefore, we have to do this or that. We're the laity. We can just, or it doesn't mean it's a false church, false council, false pope. Maybe it's just a bad pope and a council, a totally legit council that canonized a tacky yet valid new mass. That's where all the evidence is. And I don't know if it's punishment for abortion or punishment for, you know, modernism or punishment for the failure to consecrate Russia. But I do know that that's a time in salvation history that we can look at, the period of the martyrs, where they had it worse and they dealt with it a lot more long-sufferingly and forbearingly. Forbearing of the mystery of, like, I don't know what this means. Sometimes you just suffer. Be a soldier through it without saying like, oh, you know, I'm going to do something. I'm committed to action. Now I'm going to an SSPX chapel. Look, I'll get into this later when I'm going to have my friend Joe back on later in the week and talk about this from like an SSPX perspective. But one thing that hurt all of us, I'm trying to be positive, keep everyone on the bark of the ship, draw a center line down it, right? All the left caths that aren't even real caths, they're easy to pull into the ocean. The ocean is hell off of the bark. They're easy to pull off with leftist stuff, contraception, abortion, gay unions. But it's also, you can also go into the ocean from the right side. And I'm known as like a right-wing extremist, right? That's why I'm here in Mississippi. Think of my story. But you can also fall off from the right side, and the diabolic psychology, which is infinitely smarter than the human psychology, is not going to try to pull someone who's tending strongly toward the right side of the bark, the right side of the boat. He knows it's too much work to try to pull him off the left side. You're not going to get someone that's interested in SSPX to fall off the left side of the boat by enticing them with gay marriage. They'll just laugh at that. The devil's too smart for that. He can pull you off. I'm not being overly specific here. The easiest way to pull you into the ocean, which is all he cares about, is by getting you off now the right side of the boat. And he's way, way smarter. I told you people long before anyone was saying it yesterday on Twitter, this is what Francis is doing. I'm not patting my own back or not setting out to, but I have a good track record with calling out these methodological strategeries, particularly by Pope Francis. And I told you this is what he's doing. He, with weaponized ambiguity and the year of mercy, where he gave SSPX faculties and then didn't take them away, had people wishfully thinking that meant something about state. I don't really care about that. But look, he clarified in his Motu Proprio on Friday. He made it crystal clear. This is a schismatic group. So he allowed 2017, 18, 19, a bunch of people to be enticed to SSPX. And then he clarified what the church's position is and has always been. Crystal clear. Unless you're a sedevacantist or an Eastern Orthodox who spent much of the last 2 days gloating, sucks to be subject to Rome's, your universal jurisdiction, there's no way to work this out. Unless you deny the Pope's universal jurisdiction, you're subject to Rome like me. So I was disappointed to find a lot of my SSPX adjacent friends, I have a lot of them, almost gloating. The same as the Eastern Orthodox Protestants, sedevacantists on Twitter after the release of Traditionalists. Why? Because they're literally saying, sucks to be you guys who are subject to Rome. What does that mean? What does that mean if someone says, sucks to be subject to the Pope, to the see, the papal see? You know, that means you're acknowledging you're not. Hello. All the abstruse argumentation from canonical status aside, what does that mean? If you say, oh, Catholics, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you guys are suffering because you have to follow orders from some pope in Rome. That's what Eastern Orthodox say. That's what sedes say. Well, I was disappointed to see that's also what a lot of my SSPX adjacent friends were saying. I saw a lot of gloating. And it's like, well, if you're not submissive to Rome, if you're not subject to universal jurisdiction, you're not Catholic. I was saying that to Orthodox, saying it to sedes, saying it to some SSPX as well. So it was really, I think, a bitter thing to see so much gloating. And I was surprised to see that. But I did tell you that this is what Francis is doing. The one surprise from Traditionalists was that Francis, for once, clarified something. He made it perfectly clear what he called the Lefebvrites are in schism. So this is the way he operates. He entices the right wingers who are generally faithful, to the right side of the boat, and then he's going to tip you over there. Don't be subject to that. Do like I and thousands of others did yesterday, and even travel an hour, 2 hours to go to the Latin Mass. It doesn't have to be every week, because you can get the sacraments at Novus Ordo and just kind of grin and bear it. But if you want, do it every week or do it as many weeks as you can. And in the comments, post your Tridentine Latin Masses that are staying put in comment and chat. I gave you 2 examples in salvation history where people of faith, including the Israelites, have been through way worse. The third would be the Arian conflict, where 4 out of 5 bishops were supporting Arianism. So that's at least 3. That's worse than you still get the Eucharist. You could still get it every week. I'd say number 4, not having the sacraments for pretty much all of 2020 is worse. Now, this is really insulting, and Francis is setting himself against the faithful Catholics in a really more stark way than ever before. So it's where it's more irritating. He jabbed his thumb in our eye. He hates American conservative Catholics. He hates Catholics who are American conservatives. He hates North Americans. There's an ethnic component for Francis. I'm not the first one to say this. He hates conservatives. He hates traditionalists. He said there's something wrong with us. Well, look, here's the thing. If Francis did this to get back at just the SSPX, guess what? Why would you overpunish? Your punishment is overbroad. And that's not what he was doing anyway. So some people were saying that online. Nope. Because he literally tried to take away the Latin Mass from everyone without going an inch further and just abrogating it. God bless your bishop if he kept it, by the way. Go to your diocesan Latin Mass. Okay, so Cardinal Mueller rebuked Francis. Listen to some of these really key quotes. He says, the Pope's intention with his motu proprio Traditionis Custodes is to secure or restore the unity of the Church. The proposed means for this is the total unification of the Roman Rite in the form of the Missal of Paul VI, including its subsequent variations. Therefore, the celebration of Mass in the extraordinary form of the Roman Rite, as introduced by Pope Benedict XVI with Summorum Pontificum, on the basis of the Missal that existed from Pius V to John the 23rd, has been drastically restricted. The clear intent is to condemn the extraordinary form to extinction in the long run. See how Cardinal Mueller is not pretending he doesn't know what's going on? The clear intent is the extinction of the extraordinary form, which is tremendously popular pastorally with the youth. That was the ostensible reason for the move away from the Latin Mass by Paul VI. Well, the old Tridentine form is not popular pastorally, not popular with young people. Guess what? It's really popular. Francis and the older than boomer dinosaur Vatican II, tried and true, are bitter that they were wrong. They're break on through to the other side, dope smoking, doors, have a sublime vision. 1960s, 70s vision of what the youth want was dead wrong. We don't want their tacky Tiva sandals, beer, and pizza masses. We want tradition. So they're bitter. They took an L on that, but it's not a true L because he's got the power. Francis has just realized he doesn't have the influence. And Cardinal Mueller pointed it out. Look at this one. Another passage in this, the Catholic Thing article. In Traditionis Custodes, the Pope rightly insists on the unconditional recognition of Vatican II. Who's been telling you this for the better part of a year now? The Vatican II documents are solid, right? The implementation's bad and the intent was bad, but these documents themselves, original public meaning of the words, were solid, which is why Lefebvre signed them all, every last one of them. And 15 years later, argued for a hermeneutic of continuity. Nobody, Mueller continues, can call himself a Catholic who either wants to go back behind Vatican II or any other council recognized by the Pope as the time of the true church, or wants to leave that church behind as an intermediate step toward a new church. We don't get to do this with ecumenical councils. It's not because you love this ecumenical council or that ecumenical council, because I have no love for Vatican II. There's a funky intent. There's something bad in the air going on. But out of love for the indefectibility of the church, out of love for the church, if there's a if there's a religion before 1970 and then a new religion after 1970, two Catholicisms, then both are fake. I told my friend Eric Sammons this online. Can't be two religions or they're both fake. Has to be one religion with some ostensible tensions that don't turn out to be real tensions. See what I mean? I know there are ostensible tensions. I get it. But they can't be real tensions or we're all screwed and the faith is false. One may measure Pope Francis's will to return to unity. The deplored so-called traditionalists, which no one knows exactly what that term means, those opposed to the Missal of Paul VI, against the degree of his determination to put an end to the innumerable progressivist abuses of the liturgy that are tantamount to blasphemy. The paganization, Mueller says, of the Catholic liturgy, which is in its essence nothing other than the worship of the one and triune God, through the mythologization of nature, the idolatry of environment and climate, as well as the Pachamama spectacle, were rather counterproductive for the restoration and renewal of a dignified and orthodox liturgy reflective of the fullness of the Catholic faith. And I'm glad he mentioned Pachamama and the neo-paganism of environmentalism. He says it in a kind of way that's understated, but it's there. It's beautiful, right? This is a great connection that Cardinal Mueller has made for us. Look, you say that I'm trying to get back at the bitter radtrads, the radtrads that are rejecting councils and therefore flying off the bark of Peter. Fair enough. Okay, so what's your solution? Well, now we're just going to force the Novus Ordo that nobody likes on all of them. The Novus Ordo that's allowed week in, week out to be done in its worst forms everywhere. The most ubiquitous celebration of the Novus Ordo is the worst form. Young people hate this. Middle-aged people hate this. Old people, I think, have had to learn, like young dogs, to hate it, even though it was normalized in front of their very eyes. So you can't say, look, you got to be obedient, you got to be Catholic, and then allow the liturgical abuses, the dozen or dozen and a half of them that happen every Sunday at Mass. You can't allow that while you're saying, hey, we're cracking down on those who deny Vatican II. Vatican II is faithful. It's like, well, make it faithful. Yeah, I know. The documents are faithful. I've been telling trads that they have more of an issue with Vatican I, an ostensible ultramontanism, which the documents of Vatican I stand for, as they do Vatican II. It's a combination of both. But both Vatican I and II are true in their documents. However, Francis allows what I call codified heteropraxy week in, week out. Why? Because he's a bad guy. I mean, I'm telling you the way forward. I'm not just being negative, but honesty is required at every step. There was an evil intent at Vatican II. They knew to codify the documents in a faithful way. So some good, some bad. Francis is a bad guy, but he's Pope, and popes have free will. They can be bad guys. It does nothing to the indefectibility of the faith. Nothing touches the faith. That's all that matters. And as of now, evil Francis has not completely abrogated the TLM. So you have to put in a little extra effort. You can still go to the beautiful Tridentine Latin Mass. You and me are going to have to put in some more effort. That's why I did that yesterday. So there's no bad news to rival any of the 3 or 4 instances of really bad news for Christians that I told you the other day, that I mentioned as prior instances of really faithless times in the history of salvation history. Thirdly, Mueller says this: nobody can turn a blind eye to the fact that even those priests and lay people who celebrate the Mass according to the order of the Missal of St. Paul VI are now being widely decried as traditionalists. He means parishes that don't deny the Novus Ordo Missae. They accept it, and they're being punished to the tune of the same punishment as ostensibly the radtrads, but the radtrads aren't being punished at all, right? Because they just go to their society chapel. So you're only punishing the faithful Catholics. You're not punishing the ones who flew off the right side of the bark. See how that works? Francis knows this. He knows this. He wasn't trying to punish SSPX. He was trying to punish us, the faithful Catholics who are obedient, who follow the rules of Rome, who observe universal jurisdiction. He's pretending not to know. And Mueller is saying, I get it. I get what you're doing. The teachings of Vatican II on the uniqueness of redemption in Christ, Lumen Gentium, paragraph 14. Total uniqueness of redemption in Christ. The full realization of the Church of Christ in the Catholic Church, Forget exactly what paragraph that is. I think that's also mentioned in Lumen Gentium 14. The inner essence of the Catholic liturgy as adoration of God and mediation of grace. Old definition of it, reappearing in Sacrosanctum Concilium. Very old traditional language about liturgy in Sacrosanctum Concilium, as Lefebvre acknowledged. Revelation and its presence in Scripture and apostolic tradition, the infallibility of the magisterium, the primacy of the Pope, which is more of Vatican I thing, the sacramentality of the Church, but it's also reaffirmed in Lumen Gentium 15:16. The sacramentality of the Church, the dignity of the priesthood, the holiness and indissolubility of marriage, all these are being heretically denied in open contradiction to Vatican II by a majority of German bishops and lay functionaries, even if disguised under pastoral phrases. And these are the Sankt Gallen Mafia, friends of Francis, the amicus curiae, that are running roughshod over the rules in the Northern European churches. Okay, look. Men of the left, apparatchiks, don't follow the rules, though. So we get it. Mueller's just showing us that he gets it, too. Sometimes he's more center-right. This is a very base letter. So he's letting you know he gets it. Fourthly, he writes this, Mueller does. Despite all the apparent enthusiasm they express for Pope Francis, they are flatly denying the authority conferred on him by Christ as the successor of Peter, these schismatics in Germany and Belgium. The Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith's document about the impossibility of legitimizing same-sex and extramarital sexual contacts through a blessing is ridiculed by German, and not only German bishops, priests, and theologians, as merely the opinion of underqualified curial officials. Well, guess what? It's not that. It's the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. Here we have a threat to the unity of the church in revealed faith, reminiscent of the size of the Protestant secession from Rome, same region, by the way, Northern Europe, Germany, in the 16th century. Given the disproportion between the relatively modest response to the massive attacks on the unity of the church in the German synodal way, as in the other pseudo-reforms, and the harsh disciplining of the old ritual minority, faithful old ritual minority members like yours truly and you truly, the image of the misguided fire brigade comes to mind, which instead of saving the blazing house, instead first saves the small barn next to it, which is, I think, what Francis is intending to do. You see what Mueller's saying? Look, I get what you're doing, Francis. I get what you're doing. Number 5, without the slightest empathy, one ignores the religious feelings of the often young participants in the masses according to the Missal of John the 23rd. Instead of appreciating the smell of the sheep, as they always are claiming to, and as the New Testament exhorts them to, the shepherd here hits them hard with his crook. It also seems simply unjust to abolish celebrations of the old rite just because it attracts some problematic people. Abusus non tollit usum. That is touche. Nice use of the Latin. Abusus non tollit usum, right? The entire use of a thing should not be abrogated because of abuses of it. Touche. Now, so you see what Mueller did here? This is like the best thing he's ever written. He's been right before, and he's been wrong before, according to me. Says I. This is like the best. He's saying, look, the people, the traditionalists that are being punished here are not the rad-trads. They're traditionalists like me. Traditionalists like most of you, parish orphans and retrogrades. The rad-trads are actually not punished at all. How do I know? Because they were gloating. They were celebrating on Twitter all the last 2 or 3 days. I will produce for you a bunch of those screenshots when I do the show with my friend Joe, right? A bunch of memes of, oh, I'll bet the ranks are going to be swelled. This is a dub for us, memes with Lefebvre with laser eyes saying he was right. It's like, right about what? We all know Francis is evil. We all know there's a modernist strain in the Curia and has been for 100 years. We all know that Vatican II was widely abused before, during, and after to produce this kind of bark, the bark with lefties who get to call themselves Catholics as their lefties, and they're not punished, and right-wingers who are pushing against the other side of the boat, nearly falling into the ocean on the other side, who are getting punished. The punishment is weaponized against them to encourage them to fly over the other side. Mueller's just saying what I've been saying to the people that are like, well, I'm not going to obey Rome. He's just saying, well, your punishment will not be temporal. Your punishment will be after temporal. Look, if you're not bound by Rome, you're not in communion with Rome. This is simple. If you're not bound by Rome, you're not in communion with Rome. I think Eastern Orthodox folks of all stripe, I think Jay Dyer's talking about, sucks to be you Latin Mass Catholics. Protestants who understand anything about the Latin Mass, which is not most of them, say, sucks to be you Latin Mass Catholics. Sedes are saying, sucks to be you Latin Mass Catholics. And SSPX is saying, sucks to be you Latin Mass Catholics. They're all like, yeah, it must suck to have to follow some pope. Do you get that? All the abstruse liturgical, canonical arguments aside, SSPX joined right-wing Protestants, right-wing EOs, and right-wing sedes in gloating, thumbing their nose at us, mocking us, because they're like, yeah, enjoy your pope, enjoy your obedience to Rome, you papal bootlickers, you papists. That's all I saw the last 3 days. It was pretty ugly. Okay. And I mean, those of you who are on Twitter, you definitely saw it too, because it's all that was on Catholic Twitter. Gloating. But it's like, I mean, laugh while you can. I will take questions. But think about that. If you're like, hey, must suck to have to follow your parents, that's like the kid that's kicked out of the house telling his brothers and sisters, they're like, but we have food, we have bedding, we have a roof over our head, we're cared for. Like, we acknowledge who our parent is, who Papa is. The kid that's kicked out is like, what are you laughing about, man? Yeah, you have your license. You can do whatever you want. You don't have to obey the church. God's not probably going to throw a lightning bolt at your head now. But what are you really saying? Don't say that and be like, but I'm still an obedient son of Papa. It's like, well, dad ordered you to come home and say sorry or whatever. Quit doing the drugs or whatever my analogy would be. But you don't get to have both at once. If you say, hey, brothers and sisters who are still living under the roof, must suck to have a father. I've disowned father. It's like, okay, well, then I guess you're out of the family. Which, you know, the one thing Francis has ever clarified, I wasn't expecting it, was that. Oh, yeah, they are out of the family. I want to read to you a great meditation on suffering from the book of Sirach. Because I'm telling you guys, instead of being little activists like SJWs, we have to stop a bullying campaign. We're not going to stop the Pope. We're called to suffer. I'm calling you in a more Eastern Catholic way to ruminate on the meaning of suffering and to embrace it. Find your cross, carry it, and then go die on it. That's what it is to be a Christian. Quit trying to avoid the pain. If there's a Latin Mass 5 hours away from you and that's the closest, I guess you can't go. Well, you still have to go to Mass. I'm not celebrating this. I'm not gloating. I'm licking my wounds like you, other faithful, obedient Catholics. I guess you have to go to the Novus Ordo. And yes, it's abysmal to sit through. But what's there for you? 1, obedience, satisfy Sunday obligation. That's number 1. Can't be incurring mortal sins on once a week. And 2, the Eucharist. You don't have to receive the Eucharist there. Between you and me, I'm in a situation where it's about 90 minutes away to the Latin Mass. I am not in a good mental state when I go to receive, when I go to the Novus Ordo. I don't typically receive, unless it's a super faithful Novus Ordo, like Father Tom Coy's when we were in Chicago or whatever. Normal Novus Ordos, I just don't receive. You don't have to receive every week. I wait, and I'm going to try to go more like every other week. You still got to fulfill the obligation. Got to get onto the Mass property and listen to the stuff, listen to what the priest says, and be there for the Mass. But yeah, I'm not in the proper frame of mind to receive. So I don't receive it Novus Ordo. I go, I dispense the obligation, And then particularly for the rest of the summer, I'm going to be going to St. Pat's in New Orleans as often as I can, every other week or something. And that's where I receive. I mean, and that's working it out. I'm not saying you have to do like me. I'm just saying we have prudence. That's how I've worked it out in my little configuration. You can do what you need to do, but you do have to go to Mass. If your nearest TLM that's licit is 5 hours away, you're not taking a 10-hour round trip every Sunday or even once a month, probably. You got to work it out. But I'm just saying, trust in the Lord and listen to this deep, deep spiritual exhortation on the meaning of suffering, which is more deeply Catholic than we want to realize. We want to be little activists. Embrace the suffering. Listen to Book of Sirach. My son, if you come forward to serve the Lord, prepare yourself for temptation to go off the side of the boat to the left or the right. Set your heart right and be steadfast. Do not be hasty in time of calamity. This is beautiful. Cleave to him and do not depart. On the left side or the right side. That you may be honored at the end of your life. Accept whatever is brought upon you. He means whatever suffering. Accept whatever suffering is brought upon you. And in changes that humble you, like 3 days ago, Traditionalists, be patient. In changes that humble you, be patient. I'm trying to take this to heart. This is scripture. It's inerrant. For gold is tested in the fire like we are right now, parish orphans in retrograde. Stay faithful. I don't care for this Pope. I don't care for the new Mass. But stay faithful. Be gold tested in the fire, my friends. It's a thing of beauty to be gold that's come out the other side of the furnace. And acceptable men in the furnace of humiliation, they're tested too. Trust in him and he will help you. Make your ways straight and hope in him. You who fear the Lord, wait for his mercy. The key word is the verb here. Wait for his mercy. He won't let us suffer like this forever. He never does. He's a faithful God. Wait for his mercy. Don't be a little SJW activist and be like, Francis is bullying us, so we're going to this Mass or that. Just do what you have to do that you're allowed to do. That's what he's testing you, right-wing Catholics. Wait for God's mercy. Do not turn aside lest you fall off the right side of the boat, is the subtext I'm giving you. You who fear the Lord, trust in him, and your reward will not fail. He repeats that line about waiting and trusting. Wait and trust. You who fear the Lord, hope for good things, for everlasting joy and mercy, faith, hope, love. 3 supernatural things, highest things. Consider the ancient generations and see, who ever trusted in the Lord and was put to shame? No one. They don't say no one, but that's the answer. No one. I'm a foolish, petty man in some ways. I got 1,000 flaws. I'm a corner cutter. I got 1,000 more, 999 more. But one way I'm not going to screw up is by trusting in the Lord. Will I be put to shame there? No, that's one way I won't be put to shame, my friends. And neither will you. Stay faithful to him. Faith, hope, love. Or whoever persevered in the fear of the Lord and was forsaken. Same implicit answer. No one. Whoever called upon him was overlooked. No one. For the Lord is compassionate and merciful. He forgives sins and saves in times of affliction. And Cardinal Mueller is saying the same thing as the Book of Sirach here in, I think, less beautiful language, more Germanic, Teutonic language. But he's saying, look, the faithful are the ones being chastened. The faithful are the ones that took a loss here. We're not just, some of you do not have illicit TLM to run to within 5 hours. So you're just going to be stuck at this punishment, scourge type Novus Ordo Mass. Okay, we'll still go. It means something. It doesn't mean nothing that this is happening. Maybe that should be the the slogan for this show. It's not that catchy, but I think it's really meaningful. It doesn't mean nothing that all this is happening. Why? Because that's always the case. That's called providence. It doesn't mean nothing that this is happening. Me and Joe were talking about that. He's always like, well, it's not nothing. It doesn't mean nothing that all this is happening to us. It means something. It means something for you and your family's eternal salvation. Anything that happens to you, amor fati, not the Greek pagan version, the Christian version of amor fati. Anything that happens to you, bend it, turn it into your everlasting salvation in the beatific vision. I don't like Francis. I don't like the Novus Ordo. My dislike for these two items might even surpass yours. But that's not the point. The point is my obedience to Christ and to the church, which is wavering and faltering, and it's imperfect, and I've done a million bad things, blah, blah, blah. But this is one of the big challenges for us traditionalists. Stay the course. Keep the faith. Run your race. Trust me, we're there together. It was beautiful, beautiful sermon, beautiful, uplifting, positive sermon at St. Pat's yesterday at the TLM that I traveled, 3-hour round trip to go do. There were friends and family there, met up with my buddy Boss, brought my friend Michael, had my beautiful family with me, saw a bunch of your beautiful families. This is not as hard as it gets. Remember what Andy Bernard says in The Office? He's like, this is the hardest thing that's ever happened to me. I haven't had a very hard life because it's like not that bad a thing that happened to him. This is bad, and it's enraging if you let it. At Francis, who is a bad guy. I'm not saying he's not. He's being one. Pray for his conversion before his death, for his salvation, and for the church, that he'll become a good guy. The Lord works in strange ways and can do anything. But I'm not one of these. I've never have been a Pope splainer. He's shown himself over the course of 8 years to be a bad guy. And this was a cruel, gratuitous, needless, heartless, gutless, toothless slap in the face by Francis. Not going to change me, though. You're not getting me into the sea of despair, to the pit of hell, of Gehenna. Not going. I'm staying on the bark. I'm here for the long run, and I hope you guys are too. Look, God bless you all. God bless you all. I'll take questions. First, I want to give a kick a shout out to Real Estate for Life. If you're in a blue state, one thing you can control, you can't control what the Pope says because he's our tyrannical monarch for now, but you can control where you live. If you live in a blue state, get out, get to a red state. realestateforlife.org will help you. You can control your kids' education. Pull them out of Catholic or public school. Get them to my little new lyceum I'm trying to build, like Aristotle's school, with my buddies. Retrograde Classical Academy. You could take whatever classes you need, particularly late middle school, high school, starts having some tricky classes that homeschooling moms a lot of times are intimidated to give, like Latin or math. Let us do that for you. Go to timothyjgordon.com. Support good programs like this one or other ones, or good churches. But the lay programming is bringing real light to the situation, not just mine. But if you want to support this show, see me, Timothy Gordon, on patreon.com. I appreciate it. I God bless you, even if it's a couple bucks a month. If you can't do that, then support this show through buying my new book, The Case for Patriarchy. You can buy it from Sophia Institute Press. You can buy it from the wicked folks at Amazon. The Case for Patriarchy. It's on pre-order now. It's coming soon. It's going to set everything ablaze, my friends. Like, subscribe, hit the bell. I'm also going to be doing a couple talks, public talks in the fall. One will be for September 11th, and that will be in Georgia. I'm going to start reading you more details about that exciting conference, September the 11th in Georgia, in the upcoming weeks. But I'm just telling you, if you're in the South, anywhere in the region, I'm going to travel by car 5.5 hours and appear with some exciting speakers. Roosh, this is a more general kind of conservative thing. Roosh, Jesse Lee Peterson, Michael Voris. That will be September the 11th, and it'll be in Georgia. I'll give you more details as that comes closer. This is what we can control. Right? And anything else in your sphere that's good, do it. Pray extra, fast extra. You can't control this temperamental, North American hating Pope, tradition hating Pope. And no, there are still some ultramontanists online that still refuse to say so about this guy. That's just ridiculous. I see what he's doing as wicked. But the Council of Trent says very specifically, obey your wicked pastors. There will be some. The faith guarantees, guys, there will be wicked pastors. We still have to obey them. Doesn't mean you can't say what I'm saying, or I hope it's not a sin. But it doesn't say never say anything bad about wicked pastors, but obey them. Okay. Traditionis, custodes. You brought it on. You did your worst. I'm not going to let you kick me off the bark. All right, questions.
Let's see here. I think a lot of people have a lot of questions about just how far obedience takes them. So how far can the Pope lead us into, I guess they're equating it to leading them into sin. There's a super chat question, and it says, hi, Tim. Just general question on the limits of obedience. And if my bishop says no to TLM for you, and we go to an underground mass, are we disobedient?
Yes, Traditionis Custodes says you're not allowed to go to these, what you're calling an underground mass. It's got to be, your bishop has to give you permission. Many of us, because I don't live in New Orleans, have bishops that will disallow it. Now, I shouldn't say us, because I don't think it's disallowed in South Mississippi yet, or even ever will be. But yeah, if he said, your bishop says, no, I don't want anyone going to one in my diocese. Now, you can travel outside the diocese and go to another licit one. But yes, that obedience requires you to follow Christ, follow Peter in the name of Christ in all things, even imprudent decisions, except grave sin. Same thing. I have a book coming out on feminism. A wife's relationship to her husband is modeled after the bride of Christ is to Christ. It's wives, obey your husbands in all things except grave sin. Clear grave sin. It can't be because then everything would be an argument. Then wives don't have to obey husbands, right? If it's just like, well, it's a slippery slope, it could at some point theoretically lead to another sin. That's not it. Wives have to obey husbands unless they give a clear order to do or not to do something that they can't do or they need to do. Like, wife, contracept. Okay, she can disobey. Wife, don't go to mass on Sunday. Okay, she can disobey. A clear, grave sin through action or commission, you can disobey. If the Pope says, hey, take the Lord's name in vain to a bishop, then you don't have to do it. It's also only an ecclesial jurisdiction, which I'll have to do another show on. But he's well within his right. Vatican I, paragraphs 2 and 9 say you can change the rites. Okay? I know lots of people throw around quo primum. That's a papal bull. We have a magisterium. It's like a card game. It's like poker. An ecumenical council beats a papal bull, even if, and it's not right, the interpretation that the radtrads give of quo primum were right. An ecumenical council's like a royal flush, an ecumenical council or an ex cathedra statement. This is how the magisterium works. An ecumenical council beats a papal bull, which is like a pair, right? A pope can't bind future popes in terms of making disciplinary changes. Vatican I makes this utterly clear in paragraphs 2 and 9. Okay? So, yeah, if the Pope tells you contracept with your wife or don't go to mass, then you can disobey him because that's clear, grave moral sin. But at basically making it hard to go to any liturgy other than a tacky liturgy, tacky but totally valid liturgy, does not count. Sorry. And this is the same trick that I hear radtrads using as feminists who are like, well, I'm a Christian feminist. I know St. Paul says in like 7 places, wives must obey their husbands like the church obeys Christ. But, and he told me to like, okay, get in the car. We're going to eat at the restaurant or whatever. I don't know what the family dispute would be. But he has the right to do that as a patriarch. Well, yeah, but that restaurant could be bombed, and then it would be sinfully neglectful for us to have brought our family there if it gets bombed. It's like, well, then you can disobey on any grounds if you create that kind of legislative purview for yourself on the hypothetical ill or sin that might happen. It's got to be, according to the Catechism of Trent, husbands and wives, which is modeled after the church in Christ, meaning we can use them interchangeably. Wives have to obey husbands in all things except grave matter. We have to obey the church, the magisterium headed by the Pope, in all things aside from grave matter. And I am not an ultramontanist. I am not a Francis fan. And I've been publishing against Francis since as early as 2014 in Crisis, way earlier than most of the other people you're listening to on YouTube. I started publishing in fall of 2014, a year into this pontificate. So not an ultramontanist here. I just follow Vatican I, even though it's uncomfortable. Follow Vatican II on this tacky Novus Ordo Mass, even though it's uncomfortable. Vatican I and Vatican II provide challenges. That's why I read you the Book of Sirach.
I think a lot of people are having a hard time, good explanation, but I think a lot of people are having a hard time with certain things that the Pope can tell us to do and certain things he cannot tell us to do. Like some people were saying, oh, well, he told us all to get vaccinated.
Okay, so he has an ecclesial jurisdiction. He can't make you, even though, yeah, vaccination isn't a straight up sin. He has an ecclesial jurisdiction over the faith, morals, and disciplines, right? Now, the Jesuits take a special vow of obedience to the Pope specifically. They have to, he could tell them, he can tell them stuff that's more than just a wider berth than just ecclesial jurisdiction. Over you, the Pope, he can't tell you sell your car, take a vaccine, use Tylenol instead of Advil. The Pope can't tell you that. That's not covered by his legislative purview, known as, it's ecclesial jurisdiction. He could tell someone that took a special vow, like the Jesuits, that, which is why he could tell James Martin to STFU, and we all wish he would, but he's not going to do that because they're on the same team ultimately. But yeah, so that. But when we're talking about doctrine, discipline, dogma, obviously dogma, faith, morals, but yes, discipline. I read you several times from Vatican I, paragraphs 2 and 9. Disciplines as well, even though those aren't as important as the faith and morals. Disciplines as well. The church, the Pope can say every religion. Let me give you an arbitrary example. Every religious in the world, every priest, cut your hair into the tonsure tomorrow. Universal jurisdiction means he says jump, they say how high. This is why Protestants make fun of us here. Think of Bill the Butcher in Gangs of New York. You're kind of like, he sounds cool. We sound like the bootlickers when he's like these with their Romish popery. It's like, yeah, to some extent it sucks. He says jump, we say how high, when he's ordering something within his purview, which is legislative jurisdiction. There's no argument around that. Okay? An ecumenical council beats a papal bull. Say it with me. An ecumenical council beats a papal bull. And I'm talking about Vatican I, not even Vatican II. It beats a papal bull. A straight beats a pair, right? I don't know. I don't know what else you want. A full house beats two pair. That's how the magisterium works. I think we have another super chat question.
I don't see it.
Well, any other questions at all, we'll take, but we're gonna wrap this up.
So, for those who lost their TLM, I didn't. Luckily, would you recommend the Eastern Rite?
Look, I'm a Latin right supremacist guy. I mean, do what you want to do. You could do that. But hey, I am going to say this. It might not be popular. Do what you got to do. But I don't find some of the little I know about certain of the Eastern rites, I don't find them much less aesthetically not pleasing than the Novus Ordo itself. So, and then you have to change your whole calendar and stuff. I mean, do what you want to do though. But it is one way of licitly obviating, hateful, spiteful Francis, but while being licit, obedient. And you're still following the rules. There are things you can do to cope. There are things you're not allowed to do to cope. That's one of the things you're allowed to do. So who cares what I think about it? I'm not a big Eastern Rite guy. Also, think about the fact that he says Catholics need to all be totally jurisdictionally unified, and then he's not messing with the Eastern rites. It's only the Latin Rite. No, the Latin Rite's like most of the Catholics in the world. The passage I was citing before is, wherefore we teach and declare that by divine ordinance, the Roman Church possesses a preeminence of ordinary power over every other church, and that this jurisdictional power of the Roman pontiff is both episcopal and immediate, both clergy and faithful of whatever right and dignity, this means over all the Eastern rites, both singly and collectively are bound to submit to this power by the duty of hierarchical subordination and true obedience. And this not only in matters concerning faith and morals, but also in those regarding the smaller things like discipline, which Mass is allowed, and government of the church throughout the world.
What is this from?
That's from paragraph 2 of the primary Vatican I document. There are only 2 documents. It's not like Vatican II. I don't know if it has a separate name, but it's paragraph 2. Pretty clear. A royal flush beats a pair, people, right? Ecumenical Council, Vatican I, beats a papal bull. It's just that simple. I wish it weren't. I wish a papal bull could beat this. But the Pope has this power. And yeah, you could think wishfully all the way down the primrose path to hell. I don't want anyone to do that. You got to think realistically. And no one calls me a fatalist. I got a lot of ideas. You're going to hear some more when I announce some more of my books that are going to be coming out over the next 18 months. I have some pretty creative ideas for what we can do that you probably haven't thought of, that are going to be, I think, exciting to you. I have 4 books coming out within the next 18 months, and some of them are quite novel, if I can pat myself on the back a little bit. But so I'm not a fatalist. I have clever idea. If you think of even those of you who have read rules for retrogrades, some of these are clever ideas. But what we can't do is just straight up talk like a Protestant in an ortho, a sede, or I guess a society person that says, "Oh, sucks to be Catholic, sucks to have to follow Rome." Francis clarified that. He clarified you have to follow the universal jurisdiction. It's like the first precept of being Catholic, the Pope. Yeah, I'm sympathetic to like Bill the Butcher in Gangs of New York, a Protestant, saying like Romish popery. These Catholics have to say how high whenever their Pope says jump. If the Pope says jump on an ecclesial matter, he's actually right. And I kind of wish I were him then, but I don't pretend I am. Everybody on Twitter the last few days that I've seen, lots of my friends have been talking like you're Bill the Butcher. Well, that means you're out of the church if you don't think you have to say how high when the Pope orders an ecclesial order. I'm thinking realistically, not wishfully. Look, God bless you guys. Stay the course. Don't fall off the other side of the boat. I have friends and family of friends that are talking about leaving for Eastern Orthodox, which has been a rising tide. Been talking about leaving for Sede, rising tide. Leaving for SSPX, it's a rising tide. The devil is way smarter than you. He's way smarter than Thomas Aquinas, the smartest human ever, right? He's like the second rank of angel before he fell. First or second rank of angel, whatever. I'll hear the. He's a seraphim. He's way, way smarter. He's a totally different species from us, and they're just way, way smarter. Less smart than the Trinity, but closer to their intelligence than ours. And don't think that the only way you go to hell is by being some idiot tranny left-winger. That's not it. You can go to hell. That's not how it works. It's not that easy. You can be a disobedient right-winger that flies right off the other side of the boat, the right wing of the boat. Don't do that.
He knows that's how to tempt you.
He knows that's how to tempt you. You're not going to tempt me to sin by whatever, abortion rights. I just decry them. You're going to tempt me to sin with this mouth of these, this flapping hole above my chin, because I'm a mouthy dude. I've been in lots of fights because of my mouth. You're going to tempt me to sin with my laziness, with my shortcomings. You're going to tempt me to sin with my extreme right wingism. I'm trying to help you guys and say, don't do some of the imprudent things I've done in my youth. Just get into fights, sin by thinking, oh, I've never done drugs. I've never done this. I've never done that. I'm infallible. I'm not. You can go to hell. We can all go to hell. Don't be guilty of the sin of presumption. Even though we're right wingers, even though we love Latin Mass and we teach our kids Latin and we like the old form and we have little crusader avatars and we think we're knights of the Knights Templar. Get the F out of town, man. We're all in danger of getting to hell constantly. Right wingers are not like immune to hell. And the devil uses what's nearest to us as that which to tempt us to get to hell. Okay, I just care about you guys. It's been a crappy 3 days for a lot of us. And just stay the course. Keep the faith. Run your race. God bless you guys. We're all in it together. Isn't that nice? We're all in it together. God bless you. Deus Volt.